Hi, Christian. What was your first computer?
Hi, Adam. I think my first computer was a Pentium 3. Back then, my parents bought this computer to do some office stuff. And yeah, I started playing with it, and that's how I got to the computers, I think. Well, games were there before, so I started with Nintendo.
Oh,
But yeah,
so you got the Pentium 3 and you meant playing with it. Means gaming or just, fiddling around?
both actually. Yeah, so I think my first game was some kind of Star Wars game. But at least on the computer. But before I played, Mario and all those Nintendo games.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, and that kind of got me interested into, games in general and how games work. Yeah,
Was it Star Wars, you said? Was it Dark Forces, the game? You remember that?
I actually don't know. No, it was on a CD-ROM back then.
Yeah, yeah. But
Single one. I don't know. I
exactly.
think it was one of the first ones.
Because for unknown reasons, I just remember the Dark Forces, which was I think you were the Luke Skywalker, and you could walk around and solve puzzles or something like this. So what I remember.
Hmm.
And I also had Pentium. It was even earlier. I think it wasn't 3, it was 2 or something. Okay, so
Okay.
you played lots of games. In one point of time, you started to do something different, right? Or how you started coding or, destroying your computer with DOS or whatever.
Well, I'm not exactly sure anymore how it began, but I think I got hooked into RPG Maker. I don't know if you've
No.
ever heard of that. Essentially, that's like a tool to make RPG games, those two-dimensional games where you
Hmm.
just can go up, down, left, and right. And, it's like more of an adventure where you can talk to NPCs or do some quests.
Yeah, like
Like,
Diablo.
well, kind of, yeah. I think Diablo was in 3D then when I played games, but
Okay.
yeah, I mean, 2D was the thing back
I
then
think
for
Diablo
the.
was 2D. What I remember is you saw a figure, a creature from above,
Hmm.
but
Okay.
it was not. I mean, it looked a little bit 3D, but it is like from above. It was two-dimensional. I think you could only go, left and right, but not up. I don't know what 3D means.
I think I only played Diablo 3.
What is Diablo
I'm actually,
RPG? Or
well,
or what means RPG?
I'm not
Which
sure.
games would be RPG? What are you doing in RPG game?
Well, RPG is a role play game where you are some kind of character and you follow a storyline where you can do some side quests. I think the most prominent example is Final Fantasy.
Okay.
That's one of the biggest games in the RPG sector. Uh, and yeah, I mean, back then, Final Fantasy 1 and 2 were 2D RPG games.
Hmm.
Uh, and yeah, I mean, they got more advanced, of course, in the time. I think I started with Final Fantasy 7 or
Okay.
something like that on the PlayStation 1. Yeah, that's the
Or what do you have to
game
do? You
story
have to
there.
write, I don't know, text, or you are moving around, or I cannot imagine what.
Yeah, I mean, back then it was everything new to me, and I learned about variables. So you can do like conditional stuff. You can do on every object on the map. You can put some conditions on whether to render it or whether to do this action or that action. Usually it's dialogue based, where you have like you say this object should start this dialogue when
Ah,
you click this button, for example. And then you can add conditions and stuff. But usually you have a fixed plane where you can design what kind of tiles you want there. So you can model a world, and you can say, okay, this object is through this object you can go through, or this you cannot. And then you just program by conditions, and you can move around
hmm,
and do stuff.
yeah. But still, I don't got what Final Fantasy was about. Were you creature and you had to talk to other creatures in the? So do you have to write text actually in the game?
Final Fantasy was a game, like an actual game that you could buy from
Yeah,
Square
yeah, yeah.
Enix. And well, the idea is that you are a character in a new world, and the
Yeah,
world is threatened by some dark force, and you have to, yeah, overcome that dark force,
yeah,
try to
sure.
save the
But what you are
crystals.
doing? Are you going? Are you actually inside a creature, or you seeing the creature from above, and you're talking to other creatures, right? Is it like
Yeah, you're seeing that the character you're playing from above, and usually you have a party where you can play with the different characters within the
okay?
party, and it's usually fight based. So it's like the usual round based fighting where you do some attacks and try to win. Uh, yeah, just win.
Okay, I got it. And the RPG Maker was like the IDE for that, right? A kind of IDE to
Well,
create a simple game, I would say. So like
yes,
yeah,
yes, exactly.
yeah, like
So there
logo
were
for
some
games.
more
Yeah.
sophisticated games there. Few people really took that serious and tried to create actual games like vampire games and stuff like that. But I never got very deep into that because I, at some point, attended the HTL. It's like a high school
Okay.
for more technical stuff. And in that school, I learned actual programming, C programming and stuff. So yeah, I kind of dropped that then and focused more on the actual programming.
And the model maker thing, which programming language you used? Was it like if else, or should they like, they invented their own programming language, or was it something comparable with, I don't know, Lua, Java, JavaScript, or whatever?
It was more graphic, I think. So if you look at those graphic programming languages, Google offers, for example, now, where you have these blocks
Hmm.
that you can just put together. It's very similar to that. So you
Okay.
just have like a global variable map where you can assign names and
Okay.
then use these variables. And the program state was kind of globally saved
Okay.
at the whole time. Yeah.
And Google still offers this language?
I think, yeah, that's the new kind of programming language they're trying to advertise. I think it's for kids,
Ah, for kids. Okay. For kids.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have
I
to.
think I'm not sure. I didn't try it out. I just saw it a few times.
Okay.
It's more like a graphical block
So I will
language
have
where
to
you
try.
just
I never
put
saw
blocks
that from
together.
Google, so I will have to check it out. And
hmm
okay. And the is the model maker still around? Sorry, the RPG maker. You know it?
I'm not sure. No, I mean, I tried to look it up 10 years ago or so,
Oh, 10
and I
years.
found that. Yeah, I just wanted to see how it goes. And I actually saw that they had a 3D RPG maker,
Okay.
but I don't know if any games actually came out of that.
No, but it was fun just to look how
hmm
they did it, and no, just to get some ideas about the user interface and what's the output is also interesting. Okay, so you started actually programming with the RPG. It was programming, visual programming with the RPG Maker, and then you started with C, which was probably a
hmm
shock for you, right?
Well, I mean, I started with C in high school. It was a shock, yeah, because it was all terminal based.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any graphical user interfaces, which was kind of boring for me because I was already used to work with those IDEs, so to say, and now I had to go back to an editor and program console applications. Yeah, it's we I think that was only the first year to get us to know all these structured programming features like control flow and so on. And in the second year, we actually started with Java and also with graphical programming. So we started with Swing, and that was kind of fun then.
Okay.
So the learning progress was very fast, which was
Interesting.
good because I was very interested.
This is strange that you started with C and then moved to Java. I would start with Java and then learn C because it's easier, probably, right?
I don't know. My teacher said that it's more appropriate to know the basics first before you actually
Okay.
dive into the object-oriented parts. And I think it was a good decision. I mean, I knew how things work behind the scenes, so I knew that there is memory and I need to do memory allocation. And then I got into the managed world with Java,
Okay.
uh,
This makes sense.
which, yeah.
Okay, this makes sense. To learn the computer science makes sense to learn a language, starting with C, which is hard, and then move to Java, which is easier. It is hard stuff. Okay. Um, so what was your first, interesting program written in C? So what you wrote in C, was this anything interesting, or were you just more or less forced by the school, to learn C?
Well, I was forced, of course, but I was interested as well.
Okay.
I tried to implement some, I don't know, dialogue-based programs
Of course.
like I don't know, some kind of games. I think it's like an adventure,
Okay.
Dungeons of Dragons kind of like. But I didn't know Dungeons of Dragons back at that time. I just realized that it was very similar.
Mhm.
And then I also tried to implement some kind of inventory application
Mhm.
just for fun, to see, okay, how can I implement user interfaces? And yeah, it was kind of fun, but I never really took off with C or anything. It wasn't that interesting to me. Java was really appealing. That's why I'm still in Java.
Okay. So, see, you did something, you tried to gain a game. So it seems like you were motivated by RPG, right?
Oh
A
yeah,
little bit. And then it didn't went well, and then you started with Java. So were you more successful with Java? So what was your first? With which Java version you started? You remember that?
I think it was 1.5
Wow.
back then. Yeah, I'm actually pretty young.
Yeah. This is
uh,
what I'm thinking, right?
yeah,
1.5. So it was like the modern Java already.
yeah, indeed, it was. Yeah, and I think I programmed, or I tried to program similar things,
RPG, JRPG.
RPG again.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. But of course not with an editor. I mean, back then I think NetBeans was very big,
Hmm.
and I tried to model the plane with NetBeans.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, at some point you just have to get into the code and do stuff there. And it kind of worked, but I mean, I was rendering on the CPU, so it was
Okay.
quite slow, and the computers back then weren't that fast. So yeah, it was not really a success, but it was a project. I tried things out. It was I was doing threading and stuff. It was cool back then.
So you used the visual editor of NetBeans to for
Yeah.
the graphical stuff with Swing, I think. And okay. So was it a game like text-based game, I guess, right? Or was it visual?
No, it was actually visual. It
Was
was
2D,
really
Java 2D back then.
yes, right. Well, I mean, it was Swing. I was just rendering images. I had tiles, and
Ah,
I
okay,
just
okay.
rendered tiles over tiles, and yeah. But since all that was CPU based, it wasn't very efficient.
Is the game still on your GitHub account?
No, it
Why
was at
not?
school
Would be
time.
fun, right?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
maybe I can look it up.
yeah, like a Christmas note, just to conserving your history would be actually nice. Um,
Mhm.
okay. So this happens at your HTL or university time, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it was high school HTL.
But wait a
Yeah, I mean,
second. HTL, this is like in German Fachhochschule, right? So this is like not the
no.
university.
It's a level below.
Oh,
It's so you have the first 8 years are normal school, and
yeah,
then HTL is 5 years after that. Uh, yeah, and you complete with Matura or Abitur in
yeah,
Germany,
yeah.
but with a
What's the
skill
English
set.
term? You know it for Abitur?
No,
This is
uh,
like the Abitur. I think this is the like after high school, I would say
high
in
school
US.
graduation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So okay, then we got FOS is called Fachoberschule, and this is like a 2 year, like something between the Abitur and the study, right? Is it this what we're talking about?
no, I actually really learned 5 years programming and project management. It was really just for software engineering.
Okay,
So
and after that, did you something, or you were ready to?
after that, I started to go to the university
Okay.
at the Technical University in Vienna, and
Hmm.
I did software engineering, or at least I started. I did like, I don't know, 4 years of the bachelor part. Um, and in parallel, I already started with the master courses because I had prior knowledge
Hmm.
from the school. And I almost finished all the courses except for one, I think, formal methods.
Formal
And
methods, the
the,
big O
yeah,
notation and all the stuff, right? Probably.
yeah, it's theoretical,
Yeah.
computational stuff. Yeah, it's the thesis. I didn't finish the thesis,
Why not?
neither the bachelor's nor the master's. I don't know. I started a few theses, and it never really was that interesting to me. It was kind of a time waste because I don't know. It was everything they wanted me to do was just what they wanted for their projects, and I never really identified with these topics. I tried once with a
What was it roughly?
professor.
You remember that?
Well, one professor wanted me to do a migration and said I should cite from a book that was from 1980.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, the book was talking about the chicken. No, what was it called? There's two migrations or migration stories, and I don't remember anymore, but it was very ancient, so to say. So I wasn't very appealed by that, uh, and I didn't really get much help or responses from that professor. So said I won't do that anymore. Then I tried a different one. I actually wanted to develop the Maxine project.
Uh-huh.
That was before GraalVM.
This is crazy. You are one of the views who actually remembers the name Maxime exactly.
Yeah. Well, it was a research VM back then, and I was very interested in
Yeah,
virtual machines.
but how you got to the Maxine? So how you knew that it actually exists?
I was having this operating systems course, and where we learned to uh, develop a scheduler for a toy operating system.
Mhm.
And I was kind of interested in operating systems back then, and I was trying to figure out if it were possible to develop an operating system with Java.
Mhm.
And I kind of came into this area where you had to compile Java down to native.
Mhm.
And I found the Maxine VM, which kind of supported that.
Mhm.
And there's another project which is actually a Java-based operating system.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I never
The
really did anything
Java-based
there.
operating system, I actually tried that out. I forgot the name. I even wrote a blog post about that, so I will have to look it up
Mhm.
because it booted. So I tried that, and this was a complete operating system written in Java. You remember the name?
No, but I think if you enter Java operating system, it will be like the first result in Google.
Something with JOS, right? Was it not JOS?
Yes, right, you're right. Yeah, it was very interesting. I actually looked into how they implemented drivers and stuff like that. So, I mean, they had like a native API, native memory API, where they could model the native memory access,
Mhm.
and they kind of compiled that down to native code. So they had an assembler, so to say, that outputs assembly code,
Exactly.
and
It is
it
JOS,
worked. Yeah.
JOS. I was confused because there is a Lee JOS, which is for Lego, and
Hmm.
this is JOS from SourceForge. Yeah, this is and I actually tinkered around with that just for fun, and I was able to boot this on my machine, which was interesting back then. So it actually worked. So this was the crazy stuff.
Hmm.
Okay, now interesting. So you did lots of interesting stuff already at the HDL, and during your study, then what you did interesting during the study with Java. Remember that prior to Maxime?
With
Or
Java,
something in your
well,
leisure, in your leisure, something study is usually boring, but something interesting with Java.
Well, back then I actually started with PHP, and
Oh,
yeah, when I was at high school, I kind of was in love with Java, but I still liked PHP because you could do stuff so easily with PHP. But it was lacking a standard library,
mhm.
and I actually tried to port parts of the Java standard library
Oh,
to PHP to get a object-oriented model there and
mhm.
stuff like that. But yeah, I just was trying to look into all the classes and figure out what they're doing, trying to mirror that into PHP. It was a kind of fun exercise, but I never really used it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, with a colleague of mine, I back then at high school, we tried to program CMS systems.
Uh-huh.
Back then, I think CMS systems were popping out like
Mhm.
you know.
The funny story is, I created CMS systems with Java because I
Mhm.
had no idea about PHP and was afraid of PHP and the CGI. So I
Okay.
convinced my clients we should use Java because it's the only programming language I knew back then. So funny that you started with PHP. So, but it was later.
Yeah.
So I started with JDK 1011, and you were obviously JDK 16 time frame already, I think.
Mm.
Hmm.
I mean, it was easier back then. You had these self HTML pages where PHP was kind of explained as well.
Hmm.
So the entry barrier was very, very low.
Hmm.
You didn't really need a compiler or stuff like that. You just started a server locally and you browsed the page and it just worked.
But your trajectory is really strange. You started with C, then Java, then PHP. And now,
No, it
now,
was PHP, C, Java, and yeah, now I'm
okay,
with Java.
because I think if you should be assembly C, Java, PHP, and then you will end up using Visual Basic. This would be from hard to easier and easier. Okay, nice. So you did PHP work at university. It was not like nothing interesting with Java.
No, I did a lot of stuff with Java. Well, at the high school, with the colleague, I tried to implement CMS systems, but we never really finished off our CMS. We had a few prototypes, and then at the high school, we also learned about JSF,
Uh-huh.
and I really liked JSF because it was,
Yeah,
I don't know, it was a very nice programming model, and I think
it is
Angular
still
and
is.
all
I
the
would say,
UI
yeah.
frameworks today, they have a similar model for developing, which I really like. But I don't know. I mean, you said it a few times. You don't know what the compiler does in the background. So, but with JSF, you knew what was
Yeah.
happening behind the scenes. That was cool. And we tried to implement the CMS then with Java with the
I would say
JSF.
JSF is white magic and Angular is black magic, right? So,
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, we tried to implement the CMS with JSF as well, but it also never took off. It was just playing around. Um, but we did a few websites with PHP and WordPress back then. We also started a company called BlazeBit,
ah,
where we actually wanted to do some projects
at
with
high school.
customers. Yeah, high school.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we
yeah.
learned actually at school how to, start a business and
Crazy.
stuff
How
like that.
old were you? You were not even 18, right?
Uh, 18. No, I was 18. So in the
Okay.
last year, I was
Okay.
18 and turned 19. And yeah, that's when we started the business right after school.
Yeah,
And
great.
we actually had a customer. We tried to do a web shop for this
Yeah.
person, but yeah, it didn't work out. So he had very specific thoughts on how to do things, and yeah, I mean that never works out with the designer, which my colleague was. So yeah, we
Yeah.
canceled the project, and then we did some smaller things, some jobs, so to say. And next to it, we had the
Yeah,
university.
but you earn some money, right? So it
Yeah,
was,
of course.
yeah, this was nice. So I also had strange requirements back then, but it was earlier than you. I think it was prior 2000, and I created also a shop, and the client wanted from me that I will create a virtual uh, assistant in pure
Hmm.
HTML, which speaks and responds to my wishes. Something like Siri in 3D in browser back then. And I told
Hmm.
him, this is, I cannot do this. It's really almost impossible. It's like, hey, why not? Everyone else knows says it's very possible. This was new economy, Back then, every company
Hmm.
claimed they did such a thing. I said, okay, this is crazy. So I can fully understand, where the problems were back then. Okay. So you did it at your is that high school or HTL time, and then during the university you continued with your company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still continuing with the company. I had the company all the way up till now, and I still plan to continue with that work. But next to the university, I started to work for another company to get some money in.
Okay.
And at that company, I really started off with using Java EE in a business application. And I brought JSF into that company
Was
and
it during
all these
university
ideas.
time? During
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So you say,
So I
okay, I want
always
to earn some
worked.
money, so I work some
Mhm.
for
Yeah,
consulting. And
exactly.
can you? What company was it? You know it still? Which?
Yeah, I was there until recently. It was 9 years at that company.
Ah,
CureComp Software Services.
okay,
They're doing a supply chain management system.
okay.
Uh, yeah, and I worked on big parts there. I was at the end more or less the architect. And I yeah switched to Red Hat recently.
You're working for Red
First
Hat right now?
yeah 1st of November I started at Red Hat.
Oh, yeah.
Working on the
Congratulations.
Hibernate team now. Thanks. Yeah, so I did some projects there. We were allowed to do open source projects in our free time,
Hmm.
and I started, with the usual problems, like Hibernate or JPA fetching was not efficient enough, and then I was thinking, okay, how could we improve that? Just fetch these associations here and there. That was prior to JPA 2.1, I think, before entity graphs. So yeah, I just wanted to improve the fetching, and then kind of started off with a project called Blaze Persistence,
Hmm.
which is the main project now I have. Um, yeah, but now it's a query builder. Before it was just a utility method to add some fetches to a query.
Hmm.
It was kind of doing parsing and then adding the fetches.
So it
But now
means
it's a
you
full
started by
blown.
the company to earn some money, and you wanted to do something with JSF.
Yeah,
And
right.
and was it successful, your JSF idea, or you immediately started, with the backend and
They
JPA?
are still using JSF. Yeah, I mean they're using prime faces now with custom themes and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
JSF is
So
still fine. I mean,
it
JSF still works and it's still very productive if you don't
it
need,
is.
to be pixel perfect. So if you just use whatever is there, you can be very productive with JSF. So it's not like,
You can do pixel perfect as well. I mean,
yeah,
if you
but what
know
you
what it
shouldn't
does.
do, yeah, you can do with CSS, but if you're starting modify the components, this is where the trouble starts because
Yeah, right.
this is what I meant. You are because then you will have to understand or to modify Java, HTML, and CSS. This is what I meant. But
Correct.
if you can just pick, so very successful JSF projects where we just pick the components, prime faces mostly, and we're happy with it. And this was like extremely productive.
Hmm.
Any larger
Yeah.
projects where strange architects, right? If they choose a JSF and and the clients wanted something else, then it was harder because then developers said they create their own components, whatever, and this never pays off. It's just too much work to do usually during
Hmm.
a normal project. But what I meant is you wanted to use JSF at the company, right?
Yeah,
And
right.
you use JSF,
Yes.
or you immediately were forced more or less to use JPA.
Well, GPA is for the persistence layer, of course,
Yeah.
but I mean, they used JSP before,
Okay.
and they wanted to modernize a few
Okay.
things. So it was kind of played into the cards that I wanted to bring in
Okay.
JSF. And yeah, they were very happy with it. So the whole system, or let's say 60% of the system, is now based on JSF. And they are really happy with it. The company grew to 20 people now, I think.
Oh,
Back then we started with 3 or 4.
that's
Yeah.
okay. And which application server you used back then? You remember?
Back then it was WebSphere, and it was a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
Oh boy, I hated that one. And yeah, I worked, I don't know, I think
but it's
three or
unusual
four
that
years.
such a small company uses WebSphere.
Well, I think the CEO, which who also was the CTO, had a background at IBM,
Okay.
and they were an ISV for IBM, so
Okay.
they received a lot of the benefits there. Um, yeah, and they just used WebSphere because it was IBM. There's a saying like no one was ever fired for
Yeah.
buying IBM.
Yeah, but a company with no 3 persons, no one gets fired. This is what
Yeah,
doesn't make sense
exactly.
because if you have 3 persons, there are 3 persons. So all the political, games are actually irrelevant for a small company.
Yeah, but they actually advertised that they are using IBM, and they had big
Oh,
companies
okay.
as
Okay.
customers.
This back then could work because IBM was big, right? So
Yeah, right.
the old IBM WebSphere was for me as as strange as Angular is right now. So it was for me. It was like I don't know what happens inside. I mean, what they are doing, no idea. This is so huge and so slow, and everything else was so much faster. And
Hmm.
what I don't know whether you're aware of Open Liberty. This is the new WebSphere.
I am.
This
Yeah.
is a huge. I mean, Open Liberty is I think orders of 100 times faster, or this is on this is like different world. I would say. Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean,
Fast.
I
Yeah.
heard that they are not using any of the old WebSphere code
No.
anymore.
No.
Yeah, that's the
I
difference.
don't know whether any code because also the WebSphere, the old one was based on open source, but the new one is it's completely different. So yeah, it's very small.
I
It
actually
is
don't
more
know.
like Quarkus, I would say. So something like
Hmm.
this. It's just like complete different world. Okay, it was
Okay.
WebSphere with JPA and JSPs, and you introduced JSF then, right?
Yes, right, right. So we had GSPs and then JSF in parallel, and tried to model a few new modules into the system
Hmm.
with JSF. The first attempts were not so successful, but the second or third attempts then were really successful, and it took off. So we sold a few new modules for the system. The system is actually a SaaS based,
Hmm.
so we have subscriptions from big, uh, well, what do you call it? Um, Machine building companies. They
Hmm.
have rigid processes and many suppliers where they want to get their components from different sources. And
Hmm.
yeah, they took a few of our strategic modules and we're very happy with it. And yeah, just took off. We got new developers, developed new modules. And at some point we decided, okay, we need a design refresh. And we took a Prime Faces theme,
Hmm.
a pre-built one,
Hmm.
and adapted it to our
Okay.
needs. Yeah, it worked out. I mean, that's why I'm saying
and they are still using
it's possible.
WebSphere right now.
No, not WebSphere. That's what I was saying. It's perfect. It's perfectly possible to be pixel perfect with JSF.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to have someone who can change the CSS, and it works out.
Yeah,
really
it has to work, because at the end of the day, JSF emits, markup. And if the markup is semantic or at least, somehow reasonable, you can absolutely do pixel perfect stuff. But what you cannot do easily is to modify existing components. This is what I meant. Maybe,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Prime Faces is really good now. I don't think there's any feature it's lacking. I mean, there's a few small things when you use the whole component suite, you will find at least some little things that need adaptation, but you can usually work around these or request a feature and it will be implemented at some point. So it's perfectly possible to develop modern applications with JSF.
A nice looking one. So they
exactly.
really looks great. They look great, the Prime Faces. Okay.
Yeah.
So
but we switched to WildFly.
Okay.
So I always was kind of a fanboy of Red Hat and JBoss.
Mm-hmm.
And back then I wanted to use the JBoss 7, I think it was, the application server 7. It was
I wanted to ask you, which time frame was it? Which year was it when you introduced JSF?
So I started the company in 2011, I think.
Okay.
Around that time, yeah.
Okay.
2011, 12.
Mm-hmm. So then you switched from WebSphere to WildFly.
Yeah, right.
Was it hard?
So that was the first step. Well, it was kind of hard because they were using lots of IBM proprietary technology.
Yeah.
And I first had to, switch to the standards and stuff like that. That took me a few months in parallel to doing the normal work. And then I finally got it set up. And we decided to go with WildFly 10 back then.
Okay.
Which worked fine. Yeah. We were using WildFly 10 for quite a while. And then we migrated to OpenShift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think when we migrated to OpenShift, we also decided to do a migration to PostgreSQL, because before we were using IBM DB2, which was a pain in the ass as well.
Okay.
I mean, it's a nice database, but it has a few restrictions that are just, I don't know why they're not fixing that. That's
which restrictions, for instance, you remember?
Yeah, for example, a table name cannot have more than 30 characters.
Okay.
I don't know why. Yeah. And you cannot have null columns and unique constraints, or there's no partial indexes, stuff like that, which modern Postgres supports. Okay. And I really like it.
And Postgres, I think, is also a good choice, because Postgres is a very popular database. And what's amazing is they have a great, JSON support, and there's almost like NoSQL database. They come with spatial support, so you can have geo data. So it's actually amazing database, and it really takes off right now. Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I mean, we needed support, but back at university, I started a startup called Sweezer.
Oh,
we were doing what to call it?
This was competition, in-house competition to BlazeBit, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, a colleague of mine was doing a course, innovation, something like that. That was an additional curriculum, and there was kind of an entrepreneurship curriculum where they had to, fictionally develop an idea and try to get it going up to the point where they could just start doing it.
Okay.
And they decided to actually do it. So a colleague of mine and a friend he met there. And we built up a team. So my friend from BlazeBit and these two other colleagues, we were 4 people, and we tried to do that. It was Tinder for shopping. So you had like the usual, so it's like a usual aggregator for shops, but it was in the Tinder style. Back then it was very cool to have stuff like that, because you could do very interesting analytics, because you had the choice the people made for every product. Like, do they like it or not? And we actually plan to do the analytics stuff to sell it to the brands or to the shops that were attached to it. But yeah, it didn't really take off. We tried, I think, 2 years or so. We had the app in the iOS store and Android store.
And backend was Java?
Yes, right. WildFly, nice. Of course. And the front end was Apache Cordova. back then
which
through
was
Ionic.
killed a few weeks ago, right?
It was? Okay.
I think they
notice
stopped the build system. So the Apache Cordova is or Adobe Apache. This is Apache Cordova is based on Adobe. I forgot this. It was open source by Adobe, right?
Cordova? No, I'm not sure actually. I mean, all I know is that Cordova is like a compatibility layer
Yeah,
that
it's a
adds
wrapper.
native features into a JavaScript API.
Mhm.
So you just develop with HTML, JavaScript, CSS,
Mhm.
and the interesting things like, I don't know, GPS location and stuff like that, they are emulated through JavaScript APIs that are developed as native plugins. And I think that's still in use.
What I meant is PhoneGap from Adobe.
PhoneGap. Okay.
This is I confused both, but they are similar.
I think PhoneGap was the predecessor.
This is what I meant. So this is what I'm because these PhoneGap, is end of life, I think, and Cordova should be as well. So, but backend was WildFly, and how you created the backend was like a lean Java application, like thin words and nothing, or what was your philosophy behind? I'm a little afraid to ask, not that you have 5 DTO translation layers, so but or was it more pragmatic?
No. We were very pragmatic. It was a startup, so
that's
we
what I
had
mean.
to produce results fast, and we switched to native to direct SQL execution if needed, if we couldn't get it done fast enough. And it worked out pretty well. So I mean, we were using all kinds of extraordinary features, like, I don't know, advisory logs from PostgreSQL and stuff like that. We actually also had a consulting company called Cybertech back then that helped us optimize a few queries.
Well, you have lots of companies, there are more companies than people, right? So you have BlazeBit.
No, we approached the company.
You approached the company.
That helped us. Yeah.
Okay.
And they helped us optimize a few queries and our data model because we had a few performance problems. That was, I think, the start of AWS back then, or where it really kicked off, 2016 around. Yeah. And we had a few performance problems with RDS,
which is managed Postgres, right?
Yes, exactly. But it's backed by EPS, the block storage, and you pay for every IO you need.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to pay that much money, so we tried to optimize as much as we can, because we financed the startup all by ourselves. We didn't have an investor back then.
How expensive was it? You remember what you paid for the hosting costs, roughly?
Well, just RDS, I think, was around $200 or $300 per month. But we actually committed for a reserved instance for 1 or 2 years, I think. So we already had a discount.
Okay.
And I mean, that's just expensive. You could just buy on Hetzner, for example, a server.
This is what I meant. This is why I'm asking you, because what I believe is that this is actually more or less the future. That you can, buy collocated servers and then install your own cloud on the server.
That would be very cool, yeah.
Because I already heard some startups are doing this, and they save a lots of money, actually. And because the software, you can just, you can even, you can pay Red Hat for OpenShift on whatever machine you like, You don't have to run OpenShift on AWS or something like this, for instance. Right. So you can absolutely do it on collocation, and I think this is an interesting mix. This is what I'm asking you why.
We actually had a development environment, like a testing server on such private machines, and I mean, it was very faster than our production environment actually. But the production environment needed the multi availability zone handling and stuff like that. So we wanted to keep AWS. Also, we just thought that if someone invested into us, we needed to be able to scale.
Yeah.
And scaling with custom machines and custom installs is just harder. But I'm not sure if that is really the case.
I don't. Yeah, because I think until you reach, the need for true scaling, then you could migrate, Because you can achieve a lot with your custom machine. The problem you will get is the global availability, right? With Amazon, you can buy CDN in Australia, whatever. If you have local machines in Austria, this is a little bit harder. But this is the only problem I see, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was about it, I think. I mean, we we tried to optimize things and try to find investors.
And how
We
well
actually
worked WildFly in the cloud? Because, people say Java is not cloud native or whatever. So was it any troubles with that?
perfect. It was perfect. I mean, you had to specify the bind address, I think, with -b. So we had
Yeah.
AWS EC2 instances
Mhm.
with a startup script where we just, started WildFly immediately and then downloaded the WAR file from a repository,
Mhm.
put it into the directory, and it immediately started WildFly, stuff like that. And it worked out. We did clustering and it worked fine, really.
Okay. So you're happy with the decision. Okay. So then, and then afterwards you started at the was it logistic company? What do you, no, not logistics, the
Supply chain management.
supply chain
Yeah,
management.
it was all in parallel.
All
I
in
had a
parallel.
few
Crazy.
projects
So
in
there were no
parallel.
leisure,
Yeah.
right? So everything at once.
Right. There was no leisure for a long time. But yeah, I mean, after university, after I stopped doing that, it was around 2018, I think.
Mhm.
I started to do some more for myself. But yeah, I still have Blaze Persistence, the project, which also grew during that startup experience.
I use your Blaze
Uh,
bit, the Blaze persistence at your startup.
yeah. We actually developed quite a few features because we needed it there.
Which features you needed at your startup for Blaze persistence?
Well, we were using entity views, this DTO projection library, quite a lot because we wanted to reduce, the queries to the bare minimum.
Mhm.
We didn't want to select all the columns that were in a table because we, had kind of a denormalized table model.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to select everything. That was the main part. So
Mhm.
entity views was about reducing the amount of data and modeling the DTO at the same time, which worked out perfectly fine. But then, you had joins and stuff like that. You wanted to optimize that as well. And that's what we developed very hard on, yeah, back then. We tried to implement subselect fetching and stuff like that. And back then I had the idea to use, the JSON aggregation functions to actually reduce the network traffic amount by folding together collections that you need to fetch. And I recently implemented it 1 year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, it works out quite well, actually. So I mean, I had to tune a few things, but
What do you
it's
mean
actually the
JSON
fastest.
aggregation function? It means that from all the objects, you aggregate JSON into one larger. So you're using JSON as the DTO format, or
So imagine you have entity and you have a one-to-many association, and the entity has a few very wide columns. I don't know, for example, text columns with some description. And when you join the one-to-many, the database actually has to duplicate the tuples for every element in the one-to-many collection. And that's just a waste of network traffic. And if you fold together all these collection elements into a JSON representation, database just has to serve you the one record, the one tuple, with the JSON payload, and you just deserialize that on the client. So it's
so you are storing JSON in the database already.
No. That's the point. You can have the relational model.
Yeah.
But you just say you want to fetch this collection with this multi-set fetch strategy, as I call it, and it will do this join or this fetching of that collection through a JSON aggregation function. It will just push together all the rows that are associated to the main entity into a JSON string, and that will be a part of the result set, and then deserialize it on the client side.
So this already happens on JDBC level.
No, it does not.
This is what I meant. So you can do it on the JPA level, right? So, but JDBC does not know nothing about that. So the JDBC returns whatever it returns, and then you can optimize, right?
Well, no. When you normally do the join, then you would have this multiplication of rows, and that's just too much network traffic. And if you adapt the query so that it doesn't have to produce these rows to alter the cardinality, and it just folds down the contents that you need into a single cell, so to say.
But are you sending a join to the database or not?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's a subquery, and the subquery does the aggregation.
Okay, so what I got you. So
And
this is, I
yeah.
mean, you changing is not like, everything remains the same and you do something magical with the entities, because what I thought what we are doing, what I did to avoid DTOs, my entities had a method like to JSON,
Hmm.
and you could aggregate on that level, but it's already too late because the database
Yes,
did
right.
already the work. So I was curious, what do you mean by aggregation? Because I aggregated, but a level
Hmm.
up, and you're aggregating at the lower level. So my
Yes.
my goal was to avoid unnecessary objects, and your goal
Hmm.
is to increase performance. So
Yeah, of course.
two different goals. Now I got you a little bit more. So some of history. So you join the AirHacks TV and I say why you hate the DTO so much, and
Yeah,
and I
right.
took a look at the Blaze bit, and what I assumed is you are working for a larger company for a longer period of time, and there are lots of tables, and you had the need to optimize that. And and what I thought, I was pretty sure I'm working for government. So that was my
No.
impression, But they ask, what, why, and now I get to optimize performance. This could make sense, such a thing. So this is like optimizations, but in my project, it's not like we have performance problems. We have more problems with crazy architects, I would say, right? So
Hmm.
and they would like to have all the layers, not to to increase the performance, more or less, to decouple the layers, which I don't believe at all. In the entire
Hmm.
decoupling, in the entire history, it could be interesting, but it is not a real problem, I would say.
Hmm.
If you
Well, I think it depends, I mean, it always depends, of course, but decoupling has a few benefits, of course, also a few problems. But I took a look at the possible solutions. I was thinking, okay, DTOs would be a nice approach to model this statically typed.
Mhm.
And I was thinking, okay, how could we achieve that? How could we uh, model the information where to get the data from for the DTOs into the DTO definitions to reduce the boilerplate as much as possible.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, if you want to, fetch just one or two columns, you have to write the type for it, and you kind of have to wire that together. You have
Mhm.
to, write the select statement
Yeah.
and remove all the unnecessary joins that would be normally created for reusability, for example, and wire the values into objects. And that was kind of bothering me. That was cumbersome. You couldn't reuse logic. If you had big where clauses with joints and stuff like that, where you did lots of business logic, you couldn't reuse that because it was always tied together, the projection and the business logic. And I
What do
was
you mean by
thinking, how
business
could,
logic? Business logic is the word statement for you, right?
yeah, exactly, the where statement.
Mhm.
Um, and joints, of course. So,
Mhm.
I mean, you could
So what you are
do
saying
stuff like,
is, if there is a complex query, it is not
mhm,
reusable because the result of the
exactly.
query is always mapped to the same entity, right?
Yeah, either entity or custom result set mapping,
Yeah.
that was bothering me because maybe I needed a different representation. Maybe I just need the name and not the full entity
Mhm.
for, I don't know, a drop-down list, for
But
example.
this is already an optimization. So my approach would be,
Yes.
if this is fast enough, I don't care. Give me, the entire entity with the entire graph. If it's fast genug, fast enough, I'll just do it, right? And you already try to optimize because of your startup, right? So you want it to be as
Yes. Right.
performant as possible with as low cost as possible, which is your driving factor.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I did an article for Marcus Winant. He's an SQL ambassador, as he calls himself.
Okay.
Um, and I actually wrote about that, that you might miss index-only scans if you select too many columns. Because
Mhm.
if you have indexes that fully uh, satisfy what you actually need,
Mhm.
then reducing the columns that you actually select is really brings a performance improvement because it does not have to go to the heap, find the row for the tuple, and fetch the data. It can just satisfy your query by looking into the index, which is quite impressive actually. And by just thinking
So
more
what you're
about it,
saying right now is that you should prefer indices over caching, right? This is what you said, right?
yeah, of course, I would always say that. I mean, the indexes are great. They're the greatest invention of databases, I think. They magically make everything more performant. That's just awesome.
No,
You
yeah, I
should
know it.
always use
But
it.
if the entities are already in the cache, could be even faster, right? You don't have to go to database at all.
Well, caching on JPA or entity level has a few problems.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. This is I just wanted to hear your opinion. So yeah, I always deactivate caching and see what the performance is, and if it's good enough, there is no cache. So caches cause a lots of consistency troubles, and yeah, it is hard to do it right, and many projects just don't test it, and they believe it is going to be faster just by turning on the cache. That's the problem. But now I would like to understand what you actually did with the BlazeBit. What is it? Is it a bytecode processor? Is this library which extends, JPA? So what is technically BlazeBit?
So BlazeBit is my company.
Blaze Persistence.
Yeah, Blaze Persistence is the project. And it's split in two parts. So there's the core part, which is a query builder. And the idea of that is to give a different approach to writing queries with the JPA model. Because another thing that always bothered me with JPA is that the dot operator, the navigation operator, produces inner joins. That just does not feel right. And that was the first change I had in mind. You could just write, I don't know, order dot customer dot name, and you would get a name if there is a customer, and if there is not, there is null. Okay, so that would be more intuitive in my opinion. And I wanted to do that, and the query builder builds on that idea, and also extends the model. So it actually has support for lateral joins, all the advanced database stuff, CTEs, recursive CTEs, set operations, union, and that stuff. And yeah, I mean, I wanted to build the query builder that just supports advanced SQL stuff for once. And next to it, I had this project called Entity Views, which builds on top of that. And which is actually a library to model DTOs, where you can just write interfaces, and you can map interface methods to some kind of source representation. So you have these mapping annotations where you can put in what I call GPQL next. So it's like the next version of GPQL as I imagine it. Where you can have inner join, where you can have with the dot operator the left joins, and can use the bracket notation to have indexed access to collections and stuff like that. So you can actually have a target representation, your interface, what you want to have as a result, and map back where the data should come from. And it will only fetch that data. So the idea was always that you can apply this entity view, this projection, onto an existing query. So you have this query built with the core builder, and you just say, okay, and now do these projections, and it will adapt the query based on that information.
Two questions.
And it will be the perfect query for your use case.
First question regarding your startup. I forgot the name, with the Tinder for shopping.
Tweezer.
Tweezer, heißt es?
Tweezer.
Tweezer.
Like the sweater, but with a Z.
A Tweezer, okay. Wouldn't be easier or faster to drop JPA entirely and build something on top of plain JDBC for a startup, just for the startup?
Yes and no. I mean, we had lots of use cases. I mean, we're inserting data here and there, and doing joins here and there.
So it was more complex than one might think your startup. So it was actually
yes.
Complex project. Okay, and the next one, do you still need JPA, or you could completely replace JPA with your invention with the Blaze Persistence? So why you
still need JPA
for what?
For the joins and everything. I mean, it works on top of JPA. So in the end, it will still produce GPQL to a certain extent, unless you use some kind of the advanced features. It will still produce GPQL, and you can actually use it for all JPA implementations: OpenJPA, Eclipse Link, Data Nucleus, and of course Hibernate. And for Hibernate, we actually have advanced support, so to say. So we support all the advanced SQL.
So what it means is your query builder, now I got how your technology is working. So your query builder creates dynamic JPA-QL, and behind the scenes it creates a named query, right?
No, not a named query, but an actual query. Like it calls create query, the entity manager create query methods. And it gets past the query, JPQL query, and that is parsed, but it's cached,
But you could create named queries on the fly, right?
I could, yeah, but there's no performance improvement to that, I mean, after all, named queries, the only feature of named queries, and as far as I can see it, is that it's checked ahead of time or during build.
And
That's all.
the chances are higher that on all databases is going to be a prepared statement, right?
Well, there is no difference between a named query or a normal query regarding that. There is a cache. That cache is based on the query string.
Mm-hmm.
So you will always resolve to the same prepared statement, so to say, if possible, through the connection pool.
So you have then you have to be careful with the binding parameters. So you have, in the name query has to be static with the binding parameters. What I meant is because the create query is dynamic, and then could be dynamic, and named query has to be static, right? Because I mean, you are usually it is an annotation, so it has to be known upfront. And I think not recently, a few years ago, there is a possibility to create the name queries on the fly. So I was curious whether you're using this or not. So what it means is we will have to trust your query builder that there is no JPA-QL injection, which is, I mean, easy to achieve because you are creating this properly and this is tested. But this could be prevented with named queries, right? If I would create named queries, there would be no, it would be dynamic injection. There is no difference because the same problem because you are creating dynamically the named queries, so not okay. So it means you are a query builder, and the projections is what already exists in primitive form in JPAs, where you can map a result of the query to a DTO, right? If you get it,
yes. But it's just flat.
Yeah, flat. This is the trick. So you can have if you know the constructor and the constructor matches the result of the query, then the JPA does it for you, and you are extended this mechanism, right?
Yeah, so you do not have to write a select part anymore. You just say, this is my business logic, and here is my entity view, and it will generate the select automatically for you to fit exactly what the type says it needs. And
but what I do in behind the scenes, you need a little bit bytecode enhancement on generation, right? Because
yes, I'm generating the implementation. Since you're only defining interfaces or abstract classes, I need to define the implementation. I actually also have an annotation processor that generates that during build time. So you can actually see what is happening behind the scenes. But I mean, it's just boring wiring, It's sad that Java has no native tool to do that because it's quite often needed. But I mean, it's just this wiring, and then you have an implementation, an object of that interface that implements that interface, and you can just use it.
What you could also do, you could create a JSON-P object for me, right? JSON-P. This should be easy. In Java, JSON-P is like hash map with JSON capabilities. Okay. There's JSON.create object, then add. This would be easier for you.
Because I don't know. I mean, I like static types, so
yeah, you like static types, but we are lots of projects where they didn't make any sense because what we had is a Postgres with JSON-B. And there was almost no logic, and we use now in front end a JavaScript client. In this particular case, it would be perfect because I could just have very performant, queries, and the result will be a JSON-P, which is immediately serialized via REST, to my clients.
Well, you could use GraphQL, for example, and generate the schema from the Java type, which would be a big benefit, The JavaScript client.
Yeah, but GraphQL is not REST, right? So this is a complete different.
Of course.
And
but the idea is the same. You could generate through Swagger annotation processor the Swagger schema. So that would be a benefit as well.
What I'm thinking about is because now you are forced to create, the implementations with JSON-P. Actually, you should create if you would be able to create a hash map, you are also able to create a JSON-P implementation, right? And this should be doable. That your entity, sorry, how to call it, your place persistence context instead of objects produces JSON or hash maps, right?
Yeah, of course, that would be possible. But I mean, the general idea is that that the target representation that you want is defined as Java type. So there is no other way to do the mapping. I
see where you have the problem, right? Because you are putting the annotations on the interface, and then exactly. the metadata is lacking. That's the problem. So we will still have to define the interface to say what we want. And then the result, you can just give me, the class. So there is no benefit on having a generic result because we have the type anyway. Okay, now I got it.
I came from the JSF background, and one of the biggest problems I had there is that I was able to see all the methods for all the properties an entity supports, but it might not have been fetched, you know. And I didn't want to use the open session in view concept because I think that's just essentially broken.
Yeah.
It will destroy performance.
What
then,
open session in view is just that the transaction is closed after it's rendered, right? So you have to do some tricks in order to do this. Otherwise, if the domain object leaves the facade, the transaction closes and is detached. And if it's detached, and you will try, to navigate between then you get the unresolved proxy error, I think is the name. And
lazy loading exception.
Exactly. And if you keep it open, even if you have transaction which has to be attached, then you can navigate, from the view. So which was a known pattern back then. And Hibernate had problems with that, and Eclipse Link worked a little bit better with that, as I remember as well.
Yeah, but it's essentially broken, this concept. So I didn't like it. I mean, you had all these N+1 loading problems and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to, have like a subset of the entity, like a view of the entity. That's how the name came, where you could just see those properties that are actually fetched. And yeah, I mean, because you had such a great IDE integration, you could see like in the expression language, all the properties that are available in the type. I wanted to actually force that statically typed such that only those properties that are fetched are visible. And yeah, that's the background how I came to that. I wanted that to be statically typed, but of course, I mean, you could always do hash maps and stuff like that. But yeah,
hash map doesn't don't make any sense. But so in your world, so the perfect architecture would be I have entities, and the entities still JPA entities, which can have logic or whatever. They are just there. And then I could use Blaze persistence to produce on demand different views to the same entity, right? With highly optimized queries. So this optimization part, which is not obvious from Blaze from Blaze persistence. Look it up how it works. Okay, this is somehow interesting, but I missed the performance optimization part. So I get better performance, and I get DTOs for free, more or less. So if I specify, if I specify the mappings in an interface, you produce for me the DTO, and then you get decoupling, higher performance, and this is what you need for different REST interfaces. So the problem you could get without your DTO is if you have broad entity, it's our legacy database, and the entity is mapped to a table with lots of columns. And you need to know nicer REST interfaces, and the REST interfaces have, resources have just sub-views to the entity. So then I will have to create DTO, specific DTO, and with your approach is not necessary. I would have one entity mapped to one broad table, and then with Blaze persistence, I could create resource-specific semantic DTOs, right? Which makes sense. Okay, but in this particular case, could make sense that for some resources, I just create JSON straight.
Of course, yeah. But
this could be this. But then it's the problem with the metadata, exactly. And if I try, to use YAML to produce the metadata, this would be crazy. So stick with Java. But have you looked at the Java records? This could be also interesting, right?
Yeah, I actually also support Java records.
Very good.
So
okay.
You can annotate a record with the entity view annotation, and it will figure out which record component belongs to which getter, so to say, and it will support that.
Okay, this is actually this is a great feature, right? With Java records, they're really nice for such cases. Have you thought to participate in the Jakarta persistence API JPA and try to enhance JPA with your invention?
Yeah, I mean, since I'm working on Hibernate now at Red Hat, I'm kind of also working on extending Hibernate. And I guess if the features play out in Hibernate well, there will be some kind of standardization effort.
Yeah, this could be great because we could even get some persistence for JPA. For JPA for microprofile, what I wanted to say, right? Because right now it is more or less we get it from Jakarta, but this interesting. So to summarize, I absolutely see the added value. And we would never, agree via Twitter or email. This is what I can tell you. Because,
Yeah.
to discuss it, to see the advantages, disadvantages, Twitter or email, just forget it. It's mission impossible, right? A question, can we buy support for BlazeBit? Is it possible?
Yeah, you can. I'm actually working on updating the website to incorporate that. And I will update that in the next few days where you can actually buy support. I'm not sure if this project will emerge into a Hibernate sub-project or something like that, but since I'm at Red Hat now, maybe things will change into the better.
Yeah, but I mean, the project is complex. So what you're talking about is not trivial to do it right. And if you are in a huge project, I would actually ask, my clients to buy support. Because if I suggest Blaze persistence and then something breaks, I'm actually forced to fix it, or at least help my clients because they will ask for solutions. So it would be better, the clients give you the money, right? And you will have to fix that. Then I will try to sweat, with the Swizzer, whatever, and to try, to fix a library which I don't know as well as you, right? So it's natural. Support is support.
Yeah, right. I do offer that, and I will send you the links when it's published.
They need it. So where people can find you, not only you, Blaze Persistence, of course, BlazeBit, and what are the URIs, your Twitter account and everything?
I'm on Twitter. I think it's C Bykov, so my name, C_Bykov. And there's also an account for BlazeBit for the company, just called BlazeBit. Well, I'm on GitHub, of course. All the projects are on GitHub. And then, I think that's it. That's my open source profiles.
So thank you. So what I would like to do, I would like to re-invite you back next year and talk about, BlazeBit next or whatever you do or whatever you achieved. And I will play with it right now and then we'll ask a little bit more deeper questions because it seems like a really interesting project. And if it becomes some kind of standard, it is super interesting. Right now, my impression is a complex technology with lots of added value. But if something misbehaves, we will need you, which is not a bad story. But if this is a part of JPA, it changes completely. How it becomes more interesting for larger projects. So thank you, and see you in 2021.
Thank you for having me. See you. Yeah. Bye bye.